Hello, happy Tuesday. Yesterday was actually Dot Day. So on September 15th, we usually celebrate Dot Day at our K through 2 school. It is just a cute little day where we talk about making our mark in the world and being unique and having fun, growth mindset, all that fun stuff. We actually kept our morning pretty normal. We did regular phonics, regular reading, regular math. And then in the afternoon, we did a bunch of fun little activities. Like we made these little Dot Day trees with our handprints and some Q-tips and paint. We also decorated our door. Here's a picture. And actually made a little Instagram reel that looks like this over here. Speaking of Instagram reels, I'm wearing this cute little bow dress that two of my teammates actually have the exact same one in denim. So we made this little reel this morning. We're having a lot of fun with these goofy little things, but whatever keeps you excited and happy to come to school, right? So I thought today I would share what we're up to this week. I know last week I talked about writing and I said I would share a little bit about what writing looks like and how we are adding to it. But then I thought I would also share what else we're up to, because we're actually finishing up our Unit 1 in math and we're diving into addition and subtraction already. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, I thought I'd actually start with grammar because grammar is something we are doing for 10 minutes a day, every single day, which is a little bit new. We kind of used to infuse it with the writing, and this might be changing. So by tomorrow or the next day, I'll give you an update on our writing. But for grammar, these just come right from the HMH slides. We are working on nouns. So we are talking about how nouns name people, places, animals, and things. And today's focus was it being on places. So again, these slides are just right from the curriculum. So we kind of talk through them. And then we used a noun to complete each sentence where we tried to name a place that would make sense. So Richard left his bike at the park, at the school, at the playground, at the house, whatever. I see birds flying in the tree, in the cage, in the house, all different places that they could put there. And then there is a daily write every day. We're not having time for students to actually write this themselves, but we are having time to talk about it. Especially at the beginning of the year, I think this is fine. And I just kind of write the sentence here. So I said, look at the different places below and come up with a sentence using that noun. So this is not like in the book, it actually just says like, come up with a sentence and circle the noun that represents a place. So I'm just making it more guided when I make my slides. So I had us first name each place: house, city, beach, farm, playground, or park. And then we came up with a few different sentences out loud, and I chose one to write it on the board. And then when I write it, I talk about sentence structure. So I'm like, oh, we're starting with a capital letter. I count the words, I write them out, I end with a period, and I'm just kind of modeling and talking about all that. And then I ask students to circle the noun that means a place. And so once they did that, then we would go ahead and circle it. So the one I think we did yesterday, somebody said, my mom and I went into the city. So I wrote, my mom and I went into the city. And then we circled city. And then I was like, is there another noun in here that means a person? And they're like, mom. So they circled that too. And then here in math, we're also finishing up our last couple lessons before Unit 1 ends. I think I shared just the first lesson with you when we were introducing numbers, and now we are on to number patterns. But the main things we do in this first unit are identify the numbers, counting backwards between 1 and 10. We are comparing numbers, and then we're also talking about number patterns, so one more, one less, and things like that. So what we did here is we used cubes to make number trains. So we did this whole group. So we started with 1 cube, 2 cubes, 3 cubes, and we noticed how it looks like stairs and how we can actually add on that cube. And then we did a couple of the learning ones. So we just looked at this again, what would be next. We talked about how we don't have to just use cubes. We could use counters. We can count on, we can count back with number patterns. And then I gave students a bunch of cubes and they had to make these different number patterns. I'll insert a couple pictures here and here of students doing it. And so basically they had to do from 3 to 7. So I should see that staircase going up, and then from 9 to 5, that staircase going down. And it really just helped me see their one-to-one correspondence and also how they can actually visualize these numbers with these little number trains. Then we just answered these 2 questions together, and then we played one more, one less. This is a favorite game I have in my number sense print and play unit. They just roll 1 die. I'll insert a couple pictures here too, but they're basically rolling 1 dice, and then they cannot color in that number. They have to color in 1 more or 1 less than that number. So if they rolled a 4, they can color in a 5, or they can color in a 3. And then they just go back and forth and back and forth. happy Thursday. We are towards the end of our week already. I don't know how this is happening so fast, but we have been busy. I think on Tuesday I shared with you just a little bit about kind of what our grammar is looking like in terms of nouns and everything. So today, like I said last week, I really want to talk a little bit about writing. So I'm going to share what we've been doing with writing so far and how we are finishing it up next week. Every module in HMH, which is what we're using into reading, is 3 weeks long. So we are finishing up our second week of it, and then next week will be the end of Unit 1. So I wanted to just give you some insight about what the writing actually looks like, kind of how we are structuring it as needed, and also some changes to our schedule, which I am very excited about. So let me pull up some of the slides so I can kind of show you what we're doing, and then we'll get into it. Okay, I lied. Instead of pulling up the slides, because that's going to be more difficult to pull up all the slideshows, I just grabbed the manual because I wanted to share what the first week was like. I've mentioned before, the writing lessons are pretty bare boned. The overall genre and thought process behind it isn't bad. The first module we're doing, we are teaching how to tell an oral story, parts of a story, and then we're also going through the writing process. So that part is normal. It's more just the way that it's taught leaves a lot left to be desired. So let me just quickly go over what some of the lessons are. So if we are looking at, let me look at my week at a glance. So when we're looking at week 1, the first 5 lessons are basically introducing the focal text, which I shared with you, I think last week, I don't know, is Ralph Tells a Story. So I love that story. It looks like this right here. Great story just for getting everybody to understand that we're all writers, we all have stories to tell, and getting students kind of into that author mindset. But that's day 1, we're just introducing what the story is. We don't even read the story. So again, maybe takes 10 minutes. We read the story, that's day 2. Vocabulary, I always hate this one. I think they do one of these in every module, but it is a author's craft type of lesson, I guess, which I understand the point behind, but in first grade, especially for our third lesson of the year, is really annoying to me when I just think we could be teaching other things. So for this lesson, we are reading the story, pointing out words that we might want to use as authors that the author used. So again, this is very much guided by me. I did try to follow along with it, and we just picked some words, and then what I had them do is with those words, we just came up with different sentences that we could write. And then I talked about sentence structure. So I scaffolded it a little bit there. Finding a topic. So then we talk about brainstorming. This is where we kind of did our little heart chart, and we could think about all these different things that we can tell stories about. And then we also talked about beginning oral storytelling and how our stories should follow a pattern of first, next, last, and so on. And then we had 2 days. I combined this into one lesson because we had 2 author's chair lessons, introducing your author's chair. And you first do a lesson of how the listeners should be. So what they should look like and sound like when we are, listening to a story. And then we also did a lesson there was supposed to be a lesson on what you should be like when you are speaking. So speaking loud and proud and sharing your work. So I definitely combined those into one lesson, which worked out because there was something, I think one day, we had a half day last week, so we didn't actually have time for writing. So that worked great. Now what we're doing, and this is something that we do. So typically, I guess I will just say that that was 7 lessons. 7 lessons at the beginning of the year that I would not typically do. I would definitely read Ralph Tells a Story, and we would come up with a heart chart. So that would be one lesson, right? Those were 2 separate ones, and I would do that in one lesson. Maybe for the other 5 or 6 days, I would absolutely follow these lessons right here. These lessons are my beginning of the year foundational slides, and we talk about sentence structure. We talk about what a sentence should look like and sound like, the naming part, the telling part, and all those different parts. We talk about illustrations, which I actually did do a couple of those lessons before. We talk about what we can do if we don't know how to spell a word. Just kind of the basics of that beginning writing before we dive into this. But now that we're diving in, these are some lessons that I would do, right? So we're going to develop a class story together. We're going to walk through what this would look like. So for this week, we brainstormed some ideas, and I'll show you a little picture of class experiences, things that we have all done together. Now, in the past, I would probably do something with the class. We'd go on a nature walk, or we would watch a roller coaster video. There's all sorts of little things you can do with the class, but right now we just brainstormed things that we have already done. and then we're gonna write a story about it. So let me flip the camera so you can see what we brainstormed. So here we have our brainstorm, our class stories. So we wanted to come up with just a couple ideas of things we all experienced together that we could all write about. So dot day, recess time, we can all write stories about what happens at recess, what our snack looks like. We had our first whole school assembly, so we could talk about that. We did pick up Haggerty. I'm going to talk about that later. We are now doing Haggerty again, so we can talk about that. Our magic bracelets, that was the fun activity we did at the beginning of the year. First day of school, or specials. So those were just 7 quick ideas of things that we could all write about. And again, that was like one day's lesson where we talked about what brainstorming is. We talked about kind of that first part of the writing process, and then we brainstormed those ideas. Today, we chose one of those ideas. I circled magic bracelets because we took that idea and we are planning it out. Now, they call it drafting. Again, I just like my words better, but I think I'm just used to them. It doesn't really matter. It's all the same parts of the writing process. But they use pre-writing instead of brainstorming. They use drafting instead of planning. And planning is always where I do like our say and sketch. This is where we write down our sketches to help us remember what we're going to write. So let me grab one of the student workbooks because that's where we do our work. But I, of course, model this in front of everybody. I draw it on the board. We talk about it together. And then especially for these first stories, students are just going back to their desk and they're just copying it. They're not doing it themselves yet. They are copying the process. So they are planning and drafting right along with me. So let me grab one of the workbooks. So here is what it looks like. Something else I just don't like that they changed is this is their Know It, Show It book. This is a like independent practice book with tons of different skills in here, but it has all their writing pages mixed in with different like phonics pages, which I don't think is super helpful. I like to have, they used to have what was called a writing journal, and you could just print out like the 10 pages you'll need for the entire unit. And we would slowly pass those out and store them in our writing folders. So that way all of our writing work was together in one spot. But now it's like everything is, 10 pages apart. So it just doesn't, it feels a little disjointed. But we had done this together on the rug. So we said first we got our materials, pipe cleaners and beads. Next, we put them on, right? And she's showing the beads going on the pipe cleaner. Then we said that Mrs. Jones and our other aide in here, we helped put the bracelets on everybody. And we also said we got our poem at this time. And then last, we went outside and the beads changed color. So this is going to help us remember. And after we did each part, say it and then sketch it, then when we had time at the end, I had students share their story aloud with somebody next to them. So again, we all have the same story. We're all remembering it together. Tomorrow, we're going to take this and we're going to actually write our story with 4 different sentences. I just flipped forward about 4 or 5 pages, and this is what it looks like in their journal. So again, I just take a screenshot of this. I put it up on the board. I put up a little poster of our writing process. I explain kind of where we're going next, how we're going to take that plan. So first we brainstormed ideas, then we plan it out so we remember what we want to write. Then we're going to take the plan and we're going to start our writing. So here we go ahead and come up with a sentence for each one. And I pretty much just told you what they were. I'm going to write it. I'll send students off. They are also going to write it. I also don't like that there's no picture box. I mean, I know we just like sketched it all out, but it's their first writing. I like to see a picture with it, All right, so after we write our class story, this is also where it gets a little wonky for me. I always do, we definitely finish up our writing process, and depending on each genre of writing, I have a different like checklist and things that I'm looking for. So when we go back in and we revise our stories, here's an example of some different checklists that I have students do. Here's one for like how-to writing. This is what I'm looking for. Here's one for personal narrative writing. This is what I'm looking for. And you can see that again, depending on the genre, I have different things that I need students to go back in and look for and revise as needed. So these type of revision lessons are a little funky for me. So I'll tell you kind of what they want us to do. So as I'm looking ahead, it looks like it wants us to, we write the whole story out, and then it wants us to spend another day of having somebody come up to the author's chair and share their story, and we give them, positive feedback, which, is all fine and dandy and everything. But again, I just feel like we can do that later when we have more writing skills. Like now this would be 3 days out of the first 15 that we are just doing author's chair. Which is not my favorite. Also, they want us conferencing already, and I have mixed feelings about conferencing in first grade, but we'll move on. So conferencing is a whole nother one. They want us to go back in and add some details, but again, this is where it gets wishy-washy for me because it doesn't tell us specific details to go back in and add. And I am very specific when we do this. For example, when I'm teaching my personal narratives unit, I'm having students add details, but we do 2 days of it. And I'm like, okay, the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna add how our character feels during this story. So if you're the main character, because it's a personal narrative, you need to think of how you feel and you need to add a sentence to your story. We also might say, like, this is what a character is going to say. What's something you might say or think? And then you add it to the story. Again, hyper specific based on the genre. Here it's like, let's see, tell children you're going to give them questions to discuss. So you're just going to say, can you say more about that? What was your favorite part? Can we add details to that? That is so vague to a 6 and 7-year-old. It's vague to me. I don't even know what more details you want me to add. So I'm going to try to make this, again, a little more robust. Let's see, after we go back in and add, there was also one, I need to look, I think it was day 12, where we're gonna go back in and we're supposed to change some common nouns to proper nouns. Now, we've been doing nouns in grammar, but I don't even know if there's going to be a common noun. I have to think. I'm gonna have to purposely put a common noun in our story, and then we're gonna change it to a proper noun and explain that proper nouns need to be capitalized, which again is not something that they've learned yet, and I'm gonna just kind of teach it. It feels disjointed, to say the least. So like I said, there's some good things here, right? There's some good things, but then there's some not good things. And then let's see, after that, what are the last two? I bet we're sharing again. I could be wrong. Publishing, yeah, okay, so day 14, when we publish a piece of writing, we prepare it. Okay, so for this one, since we are going back in and we're like adding details and we are editing some proper nouns, it will be sloppy, like a sloppy copy, they call it. So I am supposed to teach them to go back and rewrite the whole thing in their neatest writing for publishing. And then day 15 is sharing a class story again. So students will be sharing it again. So 4 out of 15 days, they are sharing. Not my fave. That's fine. So I know that was just the first module, and I just kind of explained a little bit about how they kick it off. But that is pretty typical of the 15 lessons. I'd say there's about 6 or 7 that I really like, and 7 or 8 that I really don't like. And so last year, it looks like the next module we're going into a descriptive essay. And so again, it's like day 1 is prepare everybody to read the text. Like, we're not actually reading it. We're just kind of giving a very basic intro of our world is a special place. That's the focus statement. The story we're gonna read is called Nana in the City. It looks like that right there. I just show the cover. We talk about it a little, and that's it. That's like day 1. I would definitely combine that with day 2, which is reading the story, because we have plenty of time to do both, so I don't really know why we don't do that. But whatever. That is kind of how it goes. And then there's a lot of the revision lessons I don't necessarily love or feel like they connect directly to the genre in terms of what I want students to actually do within that genre. So last year, I think I told you this, we basically took the 15 lessons and we combined, we meaning my the pilot teacher and I, one of my colleagues who did this with me, we took those 15 lessons and combined them into 10, just taking out ones we didn't like or combining them. And then we basically had a whole week to work through some of the more structured lessons that I've created in the past, like these right here. And these lessons already have like structured lessons, slides ready to go, and it allowed us to kind of get a better indication of what students can do on their own. So I don't know yet. This is our first year implementing it, and obviously we are supposed to be doing it with fidelity, and I don't want to just take out lessons. I do feel like if we can combine lessons, that's easy. Also, we spoke with the curriculum person who's in charge of our curriculum here, and what they did is we asked them to put in buffer days. So even though every unit is 3 weeks long, we basically have 4 weeks to do it, and we only need to get through 9 of the modules throughout the year. So what that means is we will have an extra 5 days. So even if we try to follow this with fidelity for the first year, we'll be done in 3 weeks. And then we have another 5 days where we can still plug in those lessons. So I think that's what's going to happen this year to keep us on track, and also to keep our students, keep them ready to write. So that brings me to something that we are switching up, which is our schedule. If you watch this video right here, what I'm keeping and changing for this summer, you will know that one of the things that changed for this upcoming year was we moved writing to the end of the day. And by we, I mean not me, I was not included on that. situation. And I was very not happy about having writing in the afternoon. Also, our 30-minute writing block got taken, and it was like 10 minutes of grammar in the morning and then 20 minutes of writing in the afternoon, which is so hard for first graders to do late in the day after specials as their last like real thing they're doing. Very difficult. Last year we had reading in the afternoon because when they come in and do their reading, we're introducing vocabulary. They're listening to a read aloud. It's so much easier for them to do and kind of, stay up with, as opposed to the writing tasks, which are just a lot harder. So we actually spoke with our literacy curriculum person on our team, and they let us switch it. So we are moving writing back to the morning, which I am so excited about. Now we will do phonics into writing, which they're just much more amped up for. And plus during phonics, they're already handwriting and doing all this other stuff. So it makes it a lot easier. And then they go into, instead of, we can kind of keep grammar there because it's all, combined. And then in the afternoon, when we get back from specials, they will go into their reading and reading groups, and that's all combined. It just feels way less clunky. And like I said, we piloted it last year, and it worked great. So I really hated that we were switching it up when something worked wonderfully before. I think the only reason we did it is because technically the minutes don't match up with reading and writing. So reading, we only need, 20 minutes and 10 minutes of grammar, so 30. And then I think reading needed closer to 40. But what we can do is, if we need to, I don't think we will because everything worked fine last year. If we need to, we can do writing in the morning. And then if we still have that 10-minute block, we can introduce the vocabulary then, which feels slightly disjointed, but not really, with the way we introduce the vocabulary and give them talking points around it. And then after specials, I can just remind them of the vocabulary and say we're going to listen to it in the story. So that would make the minutes still line up, so we're not taking that vocabulary from the afternoon, if that makes sense. So I'm excited about that. The other thing that is happening is we are doing Haggerty again. So I think I just spoke about this last week, but with the new phonics program, we were getting rid of Haggerty, but we all still have the manual. Haggerty is not going to cause any harm. Of course, I actually enjoy doing Haggerty. The kids love it. Our phonemic awareness scores are fantastic. The question becomes use of time. We know that there's a lot of things in Haggerty that don't necessarily need to be done, but we do have the newest version of Haggerty, which did take out a lot of the rhyming activities and the onset rhyme blending, and just some things that it just gets you into blending and segmenting a lot faster, which is good. So I do like that. And we're going to not use the phonemic awareness from HMH. Instead, we're just going to do Haggerty for now and see how that goes. So that was largely a decision just to make sure that all of our districts are aligned with one another, because we are using this new program and we want to see how it goes for the whole district. And it's not just one school, it's 6 different schools. So just to make sure we're kind of all on the same page. So we're introducing that back in, which is why Haggerty Hedgehog is now on our list of class experiences, because that's something we love to do. Okay, so that's the rundown on writing thus far. That's what writing looks like. That's what it's going to look like for most of the year. But now I want to show you what we are doing for WIN this week. So I'll show you a couple of the WIN activities, and that'll probably be it for this week's video. So let me flip this around and we'll get started. Okay, so for WIN this week, we are, again, what I like about HMH is that it does move kids along much faster. If we were still doing foundations, they would still be reviewing letters and sounds right now. And this lets us do it much faster, which is nice. So what they're doing here is they're working on words with short I. So first they cut out the words and they just read them and put them in here. These are all in my literacy club, of course. Here we have what's the word, so a little visual discrimination, jam or Jan, Pam or Pan. They have to find the correct one and circle it. This one accidentally has 2 hands, everybody told me. And then just a little review for our numbers. So they have to look at the number and circle the correct one. Easy peasy for Independent Station. Always reviews something we are working on currently. For math, we are playing One More, One Less. We love this game. Students learned how to play this in our lessons already. So for this, they already knew how to play. All they do is roll 1 dice. So let me grab it. This is in my print and play number sense unit. So they roll a die. They cannot color a 5. They have to color 1 more or 1 less than 5. So they could color a 4. They could color a 6. They're just going to color 1. They go back and forth, another 5, 4 or 6, over and over and over until they color in. They usually don't finish up the whole grid. That would take a long time, but they usually have about 10, 15 minutes. for them to play, and then they move along. All right, and last for writing, you know that oftentimes I have some sheets in here for them to do, and I will, but I also wanted to introduce their writing journals. So these are the writing journals that I kind of keep with them all year long, and we kind of see how they grow, which is fun. And I assigned the story a squiggle story in their on their iPad. So they watched that first, and then I drew, you can kind of see it right here, this little squiggle. It kind of looks like a shark fin or a wave. And then students had to turn it into anything they wanted. So this student turned it into a mountain. This one was a shark eating a fish. And then they had to write a sentence about it. And we did this back at my teacher table, so I could kind of do it with them. I am climbing a mountain, and then I went down a water slide. He drew the water slide there. This one, the shark ate the fish, period. Adorable. So there you have what we are up to this week. Those are our win stations, and that is pretty much what writing looks like for the school year. So yeah, if you have any questions about this video, please let me know. As always, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up so I know. Make sure you are subscribed to my channel and click that bell. That way you're notified of every new video. See you in the next one. Bye.